any Nextels we could dust off?
Probably somewhere, yeah.
Yeah, we can use all the extra police radios.
Okay, we're good.
All right. Call to order the Wednesday, July 7th, 2021 meeting of the Wethersfield Planning and Zoning Commission. I'll take the roll. I'm here. Ryan Allard is not here. Joe Hammer is not here. Jim Hughes is not here. George Oikel.
Here.
Tom Dean.
Here.
Tony Hamicki.
Here.
Dave Edwards is not here. Mike Vieira.
Here?
There. Dave Drake and Hazim are not here. So the first item on the agenda is public hearing, application number 2087-21Z, Legacy SD LLC, seeking a special permit under the provisions of Section 52B1 of the Wethersfield Zoning Regulations to permit the enlargement of a school educational establishment at 860-862 Silas Deane Highway. And if you could just give your name and address for the record, please.
Mike Panic, 860-862 Silas Deane Highway, Feasibility Management, also Legacy SD LLC. Thank you for a few minutes of your time tonight. As some of you may remember, I stood in front of this board almost 5 years ago to the day when we bought 860-862 to refurbish and put in tenants. One of the tenants that we put in was the Russian School of Mathematics. We put them in 3,200 square feet, and I stood before this board asking for a special permit at that time to change the regulation to permit the Russian School of Math, who do math tutoring to students from K through 12. Currently, the other half of the building, a little more than half of the building, 3,800 square feet, has become vacant, and the Russian School of Math has asked to enlarge their school, basically because of COVID, not because of more students or better business, unfortunately, but due to some regulations that they have within their parameters, they need to spread the kids out more and not have as many kids in each classroom. And the previous use of the other side of the building was, as you probably know, an escape room, which had big, large rooms, which translate good to classrooms. So the proposal here tonight is for a special permit to allow the school to expand to the entire building of just under 7,000 square feet.
Is there any, Peter, are there any issues with parking or anything like that for
No.
that change in use?
No, if you remember, there was an expansion, excuse me, an expansion of the permit, and the associated parking back in 2015. I think my memo indicated that there are 44 parking spaces, including 2 handicap spaces on the property. It's never been my observation when both businesses were operating that there was any kind of a parking issue. You know, I'll let Mike maybe explain the nature of how they come and go, but I believe the parents, you know, all drop off and then leave and then come back and pick up. So there may be some congestion at those peak times, but there's a circular traffic pattern around the building, which I think works reasonably well for the intended use. And as Mike has explained, they're not intending to increase the enrollment. It's just simply to spread the kids out, so it shouldn't intensify, you know, the nature of the parking demand for the property.
Yeah, to expand on that a little bit, thanks, Peter, for fixing up my story a little bit. The Russian School of Math does not allow the parents to come into the facility and wait while their kids go, and they also space the classes out at 15-minute intervals, starting at 3 o'clock. So if one class started at 3, the next class wouldn't start till 3:15, then 3:30, and so on and so forth, to, again, help alleviate some of the congestion. But most of the parents drop the kids off and then shop up and down the Silas Deane Highway or go get a bite to eat, come back in 45 minutes or an hour, and then pick their kids up. And to Peter's point and to the question about parking, as a 5.5-year owner of the building and a 5-year watching the traffic flow, we did expand the parking lot at the time that we came when we bought the building, down the back underneath the telephone wires and the electrical wires in the back. We did expand it, except for people eating lunch back there. We've never had any parking there for the building.
Good, thanks.
Mhm.
Does anyone have any questions?
Will you be adding more teachers, more
Like
faculty, more players involved with the facility?
I would have to make the assumption that they'd have to, hire more teachers simply because, they used to have 15 to 20 kids in a classroom at the current location. And for COVID reasons and for safety, they want to cut it in half, meaning they need 6 more classrooms to add to the 6 that they have. So I would assume if they're going to have the same amount of children, they'll need to, have extra teachers to handle the overflow. I can't see where a teacher would go from one class to another back and forth. You'd have to be monitoring the kids at all times. So I would expect that they probably would hire 4 or 5 more teachers.
What was the status of the property before COVID? What were the hours of operations?
Same hours of operation for the Russian School of Math. They always start at 3 o'clock because it's an after-school program, so there's no traffic until 3 p.m., and that's when the first class starts.
And how late does it run?
I believe they go till 9 o'clock.
9 o'clock. So there's not an issue with lighting or nighttime or dark during the winter months or anything?
It hasn't been, and as part of the process of when we purchased the building and came before P&Z to remodel the entire building, we went through the process of lighting, parking, striping, landscaping, all of those issues were taken care of at that time before you guys, and then again back for the special permit to change for the school use. And nothing's changed since we, renovated the building. It's all the same.
Okay. Tom?
Question for Peter, just quickly. In your memorandum covering this application, you indicated that there had been 3 prior approvals, 2015, 2016, 2018. There were conditions attached to those. I presume those conditions have been complied and met with, but I just want to confirm it for the record.
Yes, as part of the administrative permit process, before we'll issue a certificate of occupancy, we make sure all of those conditions are complied with. So the 3 approvals were initially for the site improvements, and then the Russian School of Math, and then the escape room. And there were no conditions on the escape room. There were a number of conditions on the parking lot improvements. All of those were satisfied before we signed off on that.
Thank you.
George?
Yeah, the back porch to walk up, the concrete is spalling off of the back side of that. You're gonna take care of that?
Yeah, I actually noticed that one. I've been up in the area recently, looking at the, what was left after the escape room left. I was up there to take notes of what I have to fix inside, and I noticed on the outside that there's a sizable piece there that has crumbled off. So that is on our agenda to fix. As a matter of fact, the concrete's been hard to find, but we have some concrete going on at 1210 Silas Deane Highway, the old Puritan Furniture, which is also my property that we're developing, and the cement guy, the next time they pour sidewalks, is going to go down the street and fix it.
Okay, good. There's a light on the driving side of the building you're taking out. Why?
I don't recall that we're taking any lights out.
Well, okay, that's what I thought I saw on there, but.
I don't believe so.
Plans, but no? Because that is a potential walking area for people from the back to the front. I don't know if they'd ever use it much, but.
Yeah, I think there's one light pole at the top of the hill on the original parking
And then
lot.
halfway up the building, or, a halfway point. So.
Yeah, there's no plans
There
for,
was one there, and I didn't think you were taking it out, right?
no, there's nothing, no plans for that.
Would you be sure of that, Peter? Is
Well,
it-
these are from 2015, so it was probably something they did
Maybe
when we
that,
bought it.
maybe
and
that's,
replaced it.
they replaced it, maybe?
Yeah,
Okay.
I may be guilty of using the plans from 5 years ago again, sorry.
Well, it's the same building.
It is.
Did, yeah, right. Did design review, Peter, take a look at this at all?
No, there's no external.
No need,
Changes.
because there wasn't any change.
When the parking lot was laid out originally, they did, but
Right.
they didn't need to do it this time.
And you're scarifying part of the driveway and up to the front, and not the back, because that's the newest paving?
And no,
That-
tonight's meeting,
Yeah, you're looking at the proposed improvements when they fixed the parking lot in
When we purchased
2015.
it.
So all that's been,
Okay, so I'm confused by the
That's
old
okay.
plan.
You're reminiscing about work that was done
Don't
6
need to
years
do
ago.
that. Gotta do it.
I'm reminiscing as well of the questions, George, that you asked 5 years ago, so I was prepared. I thought I was prepared.
I think I realize what I'm doing. Okay, I think that was about it. I said rear lights, but I'm not sure, I got a question mark. I'm not sure what I meant by that, so,
All the lights that were there 6 years ago and 5 years ago are still there.
right. Fine.
All right. Mike, did you have any questions?
I do not.
Okay.
That's fine, thank you.
All right. This is a public hearing. Is there anybody in the public that has any comments on this application? Anybody in the public? Okay, if not, is there a motion to close the hearing?
So moved.
Second?
All right.
Second.
Thank you again.
All in favor of closing the hearing, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Someone want to make a motion on the application itself?
Make a motion, Mr. Chairman, to approve.
Okay. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second that.
All right. Well, we'll give that one to Mike, because he's on 7-second tape delay.
30 miles away.
There,
trying.
yeah, Branford is in a different time zone.
Any conditions, Peter?
No conditions?
No.
All right, any discussion? If not, all in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Okay, opposed? Motion carries. Next item, application 62780P, Whippoorwill Estates Subdivision, request for bond release and road acceptance. This is a low enough number that George is the only one who remembers it.
Yeah, I
In
mean,
the triple digits.
it's about time you clear this up.
We've been
You
trying.
might not
believe
even
me.
be here any more than me to clear this one.
For the record, Peter Alter representing the developer, and Paul Usello is also here, who's with Whippoorwill Associates. We have completed the public improvements. You have a memo from Derek indicating he's satisfied. He's received as-built plans from Close Jensen. I worked with Attorney Ken Slater on the posting of the maintenance bond, and he's approved the form, and the bond has been posted. So we're asking for 2 actions tonight from the commission. One, to release the remaining amount of the performance bond, and to also recommend to your town council that the roadway be accepted. And this is certainly the longest-running subdivision in Wethersfield.
Yeah, I mean, even with the changes in the statute, most of them expire within 41 years. All right, does anybody have any questions for Attorney Alter?
No, I didn't. I went over there today. You've done a good job. I drove through it. Hadn't been over there in a long time.
Thank you.
Yeah, looks good. I hope you sell more, Whippoorwill people sell more lots, though. What's holding that, all that up with the
They've been,
big housing demand these
it's
days?
been pretty steady, but those are built on contract for particular buyers. There's no
Oh,
spec
yeah,
houses.
That kind of selling, yeah.
Right.
Okay.
All right, so what you need is a motion to release the remainder of the performance bond and to recommend that the town council accept
So moved, Mr.
the
Chairman.
right-of-way that has been built. Okay. Is
So
there,
moved, Mr. Chairman.
all right, is there a
Second.
second?
Sorry.
Well, Mike, you want to second it?
Yes, second that.
Okay,
Let's keep him in the mix.
yeah, all right.
For general discussion, I think you do have a 1-year maintenance bond.
Correct, that's, so, I worked with Attorney Slater on the format for that, and it's been posted. The town is already in receipt of that bond as a separate bond from the performance bond.
Good, just wanted to mention that for the record.
Yeah. What is it, is it passbook or,
It's a passbook at Dime Savings. It was hard to find a bank that still does that, but
yeah,
Passbook?
they do, and they provided their own form, so it was good.
yeah. All right, anything else? If not, all in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right, next, discussion of recent public acts. Peter?
So we just wanted to bring everybody up to speed about some actions that we're taken at the state level that impact land use and some of our regulations going forward. So I provided you with a quick, I'll just give you a quick summary. We will need to revise and update regulations accordingly. In most cases, we do have some time to do that, but nevertheless, I wanted to just give you a quick, you may have been observing some of this stuff from afar, but now that the sessions are over and the regulations have been put in place, I just want to, so in case you get questions, I want to make sure you're aware of some of these things. So the first one is Special Act number 21-3. It's called an act concerning the outdoor sale of goods and provision of food and beverage service. So this primarily pertains to outside dining and outside drinking. So this, in summary, until March 31st of next year, the administrative approval process that staff have been working under is still in place. So that gives the zoning officer 10 days to review and decide upon applications for outside dining. The statute does allow applicants to use public sidewalks, public streets, and parking spaces for their setup for outside dining. It also basically waives any minimum parking requirements that we have. So if their parking is used to meet their parking demand,
Work with him on this when you do review?
yeah, we have an internal process where it gets reviewed by everybody, but it has to be done, very quickly within 10 days. It also establishes hours. So these outside dining establishments can go to 9 p.m. on weekdays and 11 p.m. on Fridays and Saturdays. The one thing that's a bit of a safeguard is it does not exempt outdoor music. So somebody couldn't set up shop and have music and then, be exempt from our local requirements. So basically until March of next year, property owners are allowed under this statute to do that. So we may want to sit down and come up with our own regulations so that going forward after that, we have a mechanism in place to regulate these more closely, because I think outside dining is here to stay. I think the restaurateurs have seen the benefit of that and may want to continue to do that into the future. So we probably want to talk about that at some point, maybe over the winter or the fall, and discuss whether we want to come up with our own new regulations. Right now, we have regulations that require them to come in, but there are no standards specifically that you might want to have in place for these going forward.
No, I think that makes sense, because the next one on your list, which was basically the budget implementer bill, has a provision in there that carries forward outdoor dining kind of on a little stricter scale after April 1st of next year, but it essentially also makes outdoor dining an as-of-right accessory use to restaurants. So, unless we affirmatively do something, it's not going to trigger the whole special permit process that we're used to seeing for, outdoor patio dining or anything like that.
Peter, it looks like with the new statutes and so forth, you've got a lot of work ahead of you.
It does
We're
create,
gonna be redoing our plan, right? And
Yes.
so we'll have a consultant in here in the next year probably that will be able to assist you perhaps with staffing of all the stuff that the legislature put together. I was shocked by it, and I haven't seen the detail of it. but-
yeah, we are gonna, that's a good point, George. And Denise, just so you know, Denise is out on leave for a period of time. I'm not sure what that period of time is, so we are a little bit, overwhelmed. So, but in most of these cases, we do have some time. So let's see how, the next few months play out. But we could certainly talk about when we do the plan of development.
Now, where's the money for the consultant coming from? Which budget this year?
The council gave us 50% of our budget this year, and they'll give us another 50% next year through our capital improvement.
Have access to that?
We have access to some funds, so,
Good.
yep,
Thank you.
so it should be good. As Rich mentioned, there's another implementing bill that has different regulations for the outside dining, so we'll have to take a quick look at those as well and make sure whatever we do on outside dining complies with that. There's also some language in that implementing bill about attendance of commission members at meetings,
Training?
utilizing electronic equipment, so.
Like we're doing right now.
Like we're doing. We're ahead of the curve. So, so we, at some point, probably need to talk about that. Now that we're meeting back in person, some towns are doing hybrid meetings with technology as well as being in person. I'm getting feedback that those aren't working out too well. They're a bit more complicated than it's worth. So, so at some point, we'll have to talk about that.
Yeah, I mean, frankly, it doesn't look like we're set up for that in here.
I think we could be. I mean, you've got some screens and you've got,
Yeah.
some other technology. I haven't really talked to our IT guys about how that would work, but, so there's the possibility of that, but I'm not sure. I think it's probably we go one direction or the other rather than try and merge both together. So we'll have to figure that out. The other,
Thank you for that. Certainly not perfect, but that was possible.
right. The next public act to talk about is kind of the big one, and that's Public Act 21-29. That was pushed by a large group of stakeholders, basically to review all of the Section 8-2 statutes. But the big things that came out of that primarily have to do with accessory or in-law apartments, where they pushed to make those permitted as of right. That really doesn't impact us too much because we do permit those primarily as of right, but they did also adopt specific things in that statute that we probably have to at least discuss. We do require, for instance, if we have an in-law apartment that's in a detached building, it has to be connected by a passageway. They basically stated in the new regulations that you can't do that. They also established some square footage provisions for these things, which we'll have to also kind of look at.
And who pays for the utilities?
They do have language in there about not paying for the utilities, but you cannot require two separate utility connections. That's really more of an MDC thing, so I think they're going to have to look at how they've been doing that. But they also they impacted the parking, I think, for those as well. So we'll have to look at ours. I think we're compliant with that, but nevertheless, we'll have to take a look at that
State
as well.
legislature trying to become local planning and zoning people?
In this case, they've gotten into some of the nitty-gritty. The other things to keep you aware of is that for multifamily development, you cannot have minimum floor area requirements that are greater than what the building code provides for. So in our case, we do have specific square footage for different types of bedroom, primarily based on bedrooms. We can go as low as, I think, 400 square feet, depending on, it might be a studio unit. So we're going to have to look at that also and see if we comply with that. Those are sort of the highlights. We can opt out of those provisions for accessory apartments. We would have to do that by January 1st of '23, but that opt-out is a pretty stringent requirement. It also requires council to get involved in that decision-making as well.
They have to approve what we.
So they have to approve it as well,
As I
so,
recall from reading the materials, it's a 2/3 vote from both bodies.
yes. So it makes, the bar is pretty high. As I say, the changes are kind of minor for us because we're kind of ahead of that. We do allow them as of right by the zoning officer if they meet our standards, so we may have to just tweak a few things in order to be compliant. The other thing directly that's going to impact you guys is that you, as land use commissioners, must have at least 4 hours of training by January 1st of '24, and every other year after that.
And I can't go around saying I've been around for 45 years and doesn't that count?
No, there's
It
no,
doesn't work, does it?
no, you're not,
No, I think they're specifically talking about people who,
I know. This is all new.
Maybe you'll be one of the instructors, George.
yeah, you can be the instructor.
No, no thanks.
so I think going forward, that Wesleyan training day that they offer, I mean, the town attorney can come in. There are some specific subject areas that you have to specifically be trained on, but,
New stuff there you gotta do.
yes, yes. Our zoning officers also have to be certified after a certain date in 2023.
Certified or something?
Yeah, there's a certification process for zoning enforcement officers, so they've now codified that in the statutes, where most of them have been, but now it requires it after a certain date. A couple of other things, they extended approvals, as Rich was mentioning earlier. If land use permits were approved before 2011, and even after July 1st of 2011, they can be extended for as many as 19 years. Before, it was basically 10 years, I think, so,
Yeah, and some were 14, depending on when they were.
right. There were some wetlands, strange wetland ones as well about extensions, but nevertheless, because of COVID, they felt they should at least provide additional time for developments to get built. And then lastly is the cannabis statutes. So obviously, after July 1st, recreational marijuana has become legalized in Connecticut, but they've also established a whole set of new regulations for different cannabis-related land uses. So they've defined a whole bunch of different cannabis establishments. They've got something called a producer, something called a dispensary facility, that's really for the medical marijuana, a cultivator, a micro cultivator, a retailer, a hybrid retailer, a food and beverage manufacturer, a product manufacturer, a product packager, or a delivery service and transporter. So we will have to sit down and discuss which or any of those we want to regulate going forward. We
I'm
can,
not afraid to take this stuff on as a
Yep.
commission, but I really also like to have some thoughts from the council on this stuff. And do we need to consider a joint meeting as a possibility? At least
Yep.
that's my thought.
yep, I mean, the good news is that, as I read the statute, until June 30th of '24, a special permit is required for any of these, at least for the retailer and for the, I think for the cultivators. And each community can only have one retailer and one cultivator for every 25,000 residents or population.
And not portion.
I don't know about the additional above 25,000.
2 or 3,000.
Yeah, so there's a lot of question out there about that. Right now, people are still trying to figure all of this out. But the other part of this is that the statutes say that these shall not be treated in any different way than a similar type of use. So for example, they view an establishment that sells cannabis products as a retail establishment. So without opting out of it, you would treat them as a retail, or anywhere a retailer would be allowed, they would be allowed. Unless you, as I say, you create a new regulation or you prohibit them in locations in the community. So you can regulate them, you can prohibit them, you can restrict their hours and signage, and you can restrict their locations, similar to what we did for the medical marijuana, where it's so far from schools and, you know, has to be in certain zones, things like that. So you can do all of that, as it states in the statute. Additionally, the town gets a 3% tax on the sale of these products. So those are some of the talking points. So we have time on that as well. Not a lot of time, but Rich and I talked a little bit about it. Some towns are implementing moratoriums while they kind of assess what the statutes say,
Good.
study the issue, decide how they want to go forward.
How
So that,
long do we have to do it?
that's a good question. I'm not quite,
The earlier things might.
I thought in a
require-
year, they're going to start issuing licensing, but I'm not really sure about that. So I think we have at least a year.
Yeah, I mean, frankly, there are a lot of things that, you know, just you were talking about the 25,000 people and, you know, what does that mean? Does that mean if you don't have 25,000, you can have none, you know, or things like that? What does it mean to be treated like similar uses? How do you handle somebody who comes in and basically locks up a location before they get the permit, you know, when they've told you what they want to do? You know, so just so much uncertainty has encouraged at least us to tell some of our clients, you know, think about putting a moratorium in place so that you can have breathing room without being surprised either by, you know, a change in the law next winter or somebody coming in and, you know, locking up locations and so forth, you know, when you're basically caught flat-footed without having figured out how or where you want to do it. You know, there's always the possibility that, you know, the council could pass an ordinance banning it entirely, and then, you know, we wouldn't be spending a lot of time talking about anything. But, you know, absent that, I think it would be, you know, kind of incumbent on us to, you know, to put ourselves in a position where we can study it, evaluate it, and decide, you know, when we have a clearer understanding of what's permitted and when it's likely to happen.
How long has your firm been suggesting some of these moratoriums, or haven't you gone that far yet? really?
Yeah, I mean, I think the advice has been, you know, at least 6, but not more than 12, because, you know, that's sort of the common benchmarks for a moratorium generally is,
6, yeah.
you know, that it's not meant to be prohibition. It's meant to be kind of circling the airport while you're studying it and coming up with, you know, regulations on what you want to do.
Enough
So-
time, but not too much time, yeah.
Right.
It seems to me from, you know, both how you described it, news accounts I've read of it, that the legislature has turned what was a criminalized industry, and in the zeal to decriminalize, it's turned it into a highly regulated industry. Is there any opportunity, or could we have any opportunities for us to obtain some, you know, training with regards to this legislation, its purposes, aims, how we can best implement, comply with, and utilize this law for the benefit and the purposes of our community?
There's a lot of, I started researching it already, but there's a lot of resources out there. We're, I think, at the 19th state, you know, to legalize recreational marijuana, so there's a lot of on-the-ground experience in other states. People have written about it and provided guidance on that, so there's some information out there that I think I can bring to the table as to how it's being done in, you know, other states. Obviously, we're not the first, we're not the guinea pigs, so I think there's some lessons learned out there that we can benefit from, discuss, and then decide, you know, what you guys might want to do going forward. So, and as I say, we do have some time, and as I read the statute, if someone walked in the door today, my response to them would be they still need a special permit, still need to have a public hearing, you know, go through a process before, you know, they could get local approvals. I think, you know, some of the law firms or CCM or the state will provide, you know, further clarification and codification of, you know, what they've actually done so that communities, you know, can better understand it. So I think the act was like 305 pages or something crazy like that. So I tried to go through it.
Yeah, and the summary is half as long as the act.
Yeah, so there's a lot in there that I'm sure I missed. I just tried to pull out the bullet points. So, you know, it does, as Rich indicated, it's a very legitimate, if you guys wanted to do moratorium, you're more than justified, given the newness of the statutes and the particular subject matter, and the 7 or 8 land uses that they've now created that will have to be regulated, at the local and state levels. So, yeah, there's a lot here to swallow, and I think as time goes by, there'll be specific Connecticut guidance provided, but as I said earlier, there's a lot of experience out there in other states, the good, the bad, and the ugly that we can look at as well, so.
You want any kind of a motion, Mr. Chairman, along that line, a 6-month one, something? Or is it?
Well, I mean, if you want to make,
Talk a little more about it.
yeah, I mean, if you want to either make a motion or suggest a consensus, please feel free.
I'd be interested to have more than the limited quorum that we have here to open the discussion and have everybody's point of view.
Yeah.
I mean, what triggered my thoughts is why 3%? I assume off of a gross revenue item, and more importantly, how many other municipalities are jumping in without a moratorium where they sit? So I think waiting until our next meeting and doing a little research, a little phone calling in a variety of towns that I'd be interested in, seeing if CCM is jumping on this with any sense of urgency, I think would be helpful. Yeah, to
I
mention.
think everybody's still plowing through it, asking similar questions.
Yeah.
Well, the 3% is in the law, it's basically the sales tax.
And don't forget, the state's got to get their,
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and
3%,
and the application fee of $75,000 or whatever it is. Yeah, I mean, and they have to create their entire regulatory framework.
Framework process, it's ways to go.
Right.
Interesting.
Mike, did you have anything to say from afar?
I do not.
Okay.
Peter, do you feel we'll have granny pods coming to town because of this change? It's a little more exposure. And that debate, I believe, went until 3 or 4 in the morning when it was at the hearings at the state capitol.
yeah, they went through the night.
Yeah.
At 10 a.m.
Yeah, it was
Was
crazy.
it? It was right through, yeah.
It was
Yeah.
crazy. I was watching some of it, went to bed, got up the next morning, turned on, what's the state channel,
CTN.
CTN, and it was
was
still
still
going.
going, yeah.
And,
Yeah.
so I don't know if, some of the members of the committee, turned off their screen and put their heads down and took a nap, or, kept on going through the whole night, but it was, that's,
It was a marathon.
I think they
It
were
was a
taking
marathon.
turns.
that's right, rotating them in and out.
Yeah.
So, but obviously it wasn't just about, they were proposing some really other,
Oh,
even more
strange-
dramatic,
strange choice, yes.
yeah, about multifamily housing having to be, located, within a certain distance of your main
Main hub,
transit corridors and
Corridors, yeah.
downtowns and
up
things
to
like
4
that.
units too.
Yeah, so a lot of that stuff got pulled out, so, and they focused on these more major points, so, but anyway,
Well, thank you for that.
sure.
Yeah, we'll pick it up next time.
So we don't have anything pending for the second meeting in June, the 20th it would have been? July, I'm sorry.
I know, I'm
I was
looking-
talking about,
I'm
I was,
looking at June here.
I was talking about August earlier, so, so we probably, won't have that
Take
meeting.
an action then.
So we can take this up again, hopefully with more members at the first meeting in
Good idea.
August.
Okay.
Thanks, Tony.
Yeah, I don't think we'll quibble about canceling that meeting.
Right.
Next item, 5 minutes of the June 15th, 2021 meeting. I guess the good news is we were all there.
Make a motion to approve, Mr. Chairman.
Okay.
Could I add one addition to page 5 where we talked about the duplexes or the variety of properties there? I just want to note that, for the record, that I mentioned, I think there's up to 22 family properties between Knott Street and Jordan Lane. I'd like to just add that to the record, just because I've been approached by a couple other citizens that were concerned about this, allowing their 2-acre, 1-acre parcels to be enhanced further with a variety of duplexes in other parts of town. And I think that's a relevant issue.
You have heard.
I've been approached by a couple people wondering if their assessments would change if they modified their 1- and 2-acre lots to add duplexes.
Yes.
So I think that's important to add that, yes is the answer. But it's important to add for that, from Knott Street to Jordan Lane, there's, I think, up to 22 families.
Are you counting the town ones?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, and two sentences below that, where I said traffic will not be a winning scenario, maybe I said that, I don't remember it. And I don't know what I meant if I did say that. All right,
George made the motion. with-
okay,
I'll second that with,
all right. Any discussion? If not, all in favor, say aye.
aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Okay.
I'll abstain.
No, you can't.
We need we need your vote.
We need 5 votes.
Oh, okay. I wasn't here, so I was,
Well, you're listed as present, so go ahead and vote.
okay.
I think you were, Mike, at that
Yeah,
time.
you were.
Yeah, you were there.
Yeah, you had
Was
your,
this on?
yeah, your TV off.
Okay. I know I missed one recently.
All right.
It was a glass of red wine we saw you having, I think, on the Zoom meeting.
Yeah, we heard singing in the background.
Now I know you're lying, some of you.
All right, staff reports, anything?
I was just looking at the minutes to see what I reported on at the last meeting. I don't want to duplicate.
Popeyes.
Popeyes, yeah, so you've noticed that. I just reached out to them.
When's that gonna open up?
They're still, I mean, it's kind of, a little bit, I wouldn't say backwards, but they've done most of the outside work, including the landscaping, but the inside is, got a long ways to go, so.
I hear Omar's old barber shop at the other end of the shopping center, there's gonna be a driving school going in there, he said to me.
I've been approached by a couple of tenants for that shopping center, so we'll see what transpires over the, yeah,
I
but,
asked him if he knew what driving school, he said,
yeah, it's a new, yeah, someone has I believe
you
it.
gotta redo it, I imagine.
Yeah, they
old
would.
Barber shop.
Yeah, it's shocking to me that we don't have a driving school in Wethersfield when, you know, we're the headquarters for DMV and you see driving schools
Surprised we
all
don't
over
have
town.
more of them.
Yeah, we don't have any, actually, so, when I thought about it, when he, started talking about it, so we'll see if that, materializes as an actual, application, so I'm looking at my,
Yeah, I mean, judging by the traffic on the way over here, we do need a driving school. in
that's
town.
right, yeah, now that people are coming back out and driving, you know?
You forgot how to drive.
We skipped the part on stop signs.
That's right. I'm just looking at the list, so,
The trade's covered.
we're continuing to work with the Masonic building and the brewery in there. The auction house has been sold, I mentioned that last time, but they're working on some plans to come in to the commission at some point in the near future.
Peter, that whole parcel was signed, the auction
Yeah.
was sold?
Yeah, it's actually 2 parcels, where the building is, and then you got the empty parking lot in the back. Let's see, what else? We mentioned Arrow Road.
The former Puritan site, that's up for lease, one building's up?
He is working on one building, and he was always going to lease the second building.
Okay.
So he is talking to somebody now, so we'll see
Excellent.
if, they might have to come in and revise the plan, so. We have a building permit pending for Sally's Pizza from New Haven to go into the Borden building.
where?
So,
The board,
the lower level of the Borden.
Oh,
So that's newsworthy, I think.
well, that is newsworthy.
Yes.
I'm gonna tell the press that one.
So I think those are the,
Serious.
I think those are the highlights. As Rich mentioned, Denise is out for a while, so I'm only really focusing in on the main things. So I know we have to get the Plan of Conservation and Development out there for an RFP or an RFQ, so I'm going to be working on that so we can get that, at least get somebody under contract and get a timeline, because time will fly as that gets closer and closer, and we really only have
What's it been,
less
11
than 2
years?
years. 10 years.
it's been 10 years?
Yeah, so
already?
it'll be 10 years in '23.
Do you think any problem with getting people to, consultants?
No, it's just a process. By the
Just
time I
2 or
advertise
3
it,
months to-
we review the proposals, interview them. Yeah, it takes time, so the sooner I can get that out the door,
Yeah, right.
the faster we can get somebody on board. We have to do the affordable housing plan by next, so we have to sort of,
Yeah, what's the deadline on that?
it's next June. So that has to be done a year ahead of the overall plan, so we gotta figure all that out. We did apply for another
I
grant,
don't even know what one is technically.
an affordable housing plan. Yeah, you guys have never done one before, so it's new.
No.
It's new territory.
I know what the state does, but
But a bunch of towns have done them, so there's a lot of good
that was 20 years
examples out there, so.
Yeah.
That's it for me.
All right, thank you. Public comment from the public?
Is there anything happening with Mediplex? I see they're putting a fence up around it. Is that long-term mothballing or something?
That was something we required the property owner to do because people were,
Fires and stuff?
yeah, it was getting more and more problematic, and we're getting calls from the neighbors now. So, so hopefully it'll at least minimize that, so.
All right. Anything else anybody has? Okay, if not, is there a motion to adjourn?
so moved, Mr. Chairman.
Second.
All right, Mike second.
Tom Dean will
Mike, you
never
can
be
have
part of the
the
minutes.
actual motion if you want.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 All right, thank you.
Well done, Mike.
Yeah, thank you for